Hello guys and gals, my name is Lycan from Iron Fist, playing Terran Republic on the Connery server, and today we're going to take a look at the map. Before we get started, I'd like to mention that the inspiration for this video came from a new player that joined our ranks, but he was new, and I mean really new to the game. While I was explaining everything I'm about to share with you guys, many of the other people joined our TeamSpeak channel, and after the lecture was done, the common consensus from some of our veterans were like, wow, I really wish somebody would have walked me through this the way that you did. So, I'm going to be creating some introduction to PlanetSide videos, hopefully with many more to come in the future. But first, as stated, we're going to be looking at the map, which has a lot of power on PlanetSide. We won't really be touching on the tactics about map control, but more or less just an overview of what the map actually is, what to look for, and how to navigate it. Sit back, relax, and hopefully we can get some newer players educated. Chances are that when you first installed PlanetSide, you were giddy as a schoolgirl. I know I was. I even dressed like that. However, I was quite literally thrown into the action. It probably looks something similar to what you see. You were literally shot out of a giant dropship at 500 meters per second, straight into the heart of an epic battle. When you land, you look around and you think, holy crap, where am I? What am I doing? What are all these things shooting? And then you wander around, and the result, well, it was probably something like this. Some players may have woken up from their Matrix-style slumber and wound up in a weird-looking tube, much like what we're seeing here. Either way, at first glance, this world can be very overwhelming, and it is very much worth it to take a few minutes, orientate yourselves, and learn about where you are before you decide what to do. But let's go ahead and backtrack to the Hands of the Proximity Mine where I died. This is your spawn window. Where you died will be annotated by a skull and crossbones on the map. And before we get too far into this clip, I'm going to be attempted to be resurrected here by a guy named Kasagi, who's a friendly medic and wants to revive me. But since this is a training video and we need to go over some of the stuff, I have to deny him that 100 experience. Man, is he persistent. On the right hand side, you have what are called your deployment locations. These are all the respawn points that are nearby and available for you to respawn at and get back into the fight. You can see that on this particular death, there's 3 Sunders that are available, along with some other outlying bases. By clicking on the Sunders or outlying bases, you can generally gauge how close they were or are in proximity to you when you died. You can pan the camera around by clicking and dragging your mouse, but it should be noted these spawn locations also come up as little green dots on the map. Below that, you're going to see a Reinforcements Needed tab. This is going to give you an extra spawn locations, generally speaking, where a heavier fight's going on. On the bottom left, you have the option that when you spawn, you can change your class automatically upon spawning, as well as customize the loadout of your gear. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. The warp gate will always be available for you to spawn at. It's your safe zone or your staging area, if you will. And it's a really good place to start, especially since I won't get shot at while we're doing this video. As I prefaced in my Liberation video, all of what we're going to be covering here is going to be the same across all factions, though the color schemes will definitely be different. So once again, while this is done in the Terran Republic warp gate, each faction will be able to still follow along. I'm going to go ahead and sneak off over the side of the warp gate and just show you what the outside of the warp gate looks like. If you're in a giant bubble with a huge glowing force field around it, you're in a warp gate. As mentioned, it's your safe zone, staging area, and every other time that you log in after your first attempt, you'll be put at a warp gate. So, now onto the map. You can bring up the map by pressing the M button, which is very common for many games. However, unlike many other games, especially with first-person shooters, this map is huge. So we're going to break it down section by section and hopefully be able to tackle this issue. As you can see, when I redeployed back to the warp gate and I bring up my map and I zoom in, I'm at my own warp gate. The warp gate, though a circle from the inside, looks kind of funny from the air. You are, or I am in this particular sense, represented by an arrow, and the point of the arrow shows which direction I'm facing. Each warp gate has 2 territories attached to it, normally on the back side, and they're non unconquerable by any other opposing factions. These are going to be the two on the TR side. If we drag the map to the other side of the continent, we can see the Indar Vanu Sovereignty Warp Gate. Their warp gate, other than being purple, is the exact same as far as layout, and they also have two sub-bases that are unobtainable by any other faction. Scrolling to the top of the map on Indar, we see the same thing again, but with the NC warp gate. The layout's the exact same, and they also have two territories that nobody else control. But now, what does all this mean? Well, at the top of the map you can see in big white letters the name Indar. Right now in PlanetSide, there's 3 different continents. The first one we're going to show here is Indar. If you're on another continent, the white letters at the top will have that respective name. Moving on to the left-hand side, we said that there's 3 other continents. As stated, the first one that we're on is Indar. We know it not only because of the white letters at the top, but because on those little 3 continents on the left-hand side, it has an arrow symbol indicating that we're on it. You can view the other continents by left-clicking on them, so let's go ahead and check out Esamir. Esamir is going to be the same way as Indar. It'll have 3 warp gates with 2 non-conquerable zones. The NC warp gate in the top right, in the top left we have the VS warp gate and their 2 regions, and then at the bottom we have the Esamir Terran warp gate and our 2 regions. Let's go ahead and click on the 3rd continent, and then we're going to be brought up with Amrish. What a beautiful sea of red that is. All the same rules apply, 3 warp gates, 1 for each faction, and 2 dedicated regions for that faction that are non-conquerable for anybody else. But let's go ahead and bring it back to Indar, since that's the continent that we're currently on. Just remember that you can look at and keep tabs on what's happening on the other continents by clicking on them in the upper left-hand corner of the map pane. Something to note while looking at the map are the actual colors of the continents in the top left. Indar is colored a very light blue, which means that no faction has conquered it. Esamir, as you can see, is purple, which means that the Vanu Sovereignty has conquered it last. And this is also represented directly underneath the name at the top. Each continent has a bonus that is provided across all Empire players of that faction when they conquer the continent. Esamir gives all VS on every continent a 10% reduction in the cost of pulling any ground vehicles. When we flop over to Amrish, we see that it was last conquered by the Terran Republic, and it gives 10% off the cost of planes, i.e. Liberators, Mosquitoes, and Galaxies. Indar, though unconquered right now because of the light blue tinge around the map, will give 10% off all infantry items such as grenades, claymores, and mech suits. Moving down to the bottom left-hand side of the map, we have the instant action tabs. You can click on these, and although mine are on cooldown right now, and it'll automatically take you to the fight via one of those beloved drop pods. So, we've covered the left-hand side of the map options. Let's move on to the right-hand side. The top right panel is the statistics panel. Right now, with what it's showing, we can see the population on the current continent that we're on. By clicking on a different continent like Esamir, the populations are obviously going to change because there's a different number of people on that continent. It should also be noted that the less amount of people that you have on a continent, you may be given an experience bonus, almost as an incentive for you to go there. But as the population swings, you're going to lose that bonus. Now, looking at the Amrish population, we see a large amount of TR presence, and the NC is actually getting a 21% bonus on experience because they're outnumbered. The world population shows just that, the amount overall across the entire world, percentage-wise, of how many of each faction are online. If you drop the menu down to territory control, it will show the percentage of territory owned by each faction of the particular current continent that you're looking at. Right below the statistics window are the resources. You get resources in this game that are provided at a rate of every couple of minutes by owning certain territories. If we uncheck the resource count, you will see that the resources on the map have gone away and now the map is slightly clearer. However, we can't see what each region provides us by owning it, so let's take them off one by one. The first one that we're going to check will be the air resources, and air resources are used to pull air vehicles. When we have the air resources clicked, it'll show the indicators only on the regions that supply air resources. By looking around and zooming in, we can see that NS Research Lab is providing 4 air resources to us. Anaya Labs is providing 4 as well, and Paris Am Station is actually giving 30. Again, keep in mind that the larger the facility, the more resources that it will provide. Also, you're going to start to see a pattern emerge. The surrounding areas around Paris Am Station are also going to provide air resources, but at slightly lower rates, Sears Farm and Leopardwood Nursery included. If we pan the map around to look for other air resources, we'll see that the AMP stations give 30, while again the outlining areas will give between 2 and 4. Now let's go ahead and unselect the air resources and take a look at mechanical resources, which are going to be used to pull tanks, Sunders, and other ground vehicles. Again, you're going to find the same pattern emerging. Briggs Laboratories right now is giving the NC3 mechanized resources, and all the mechanized resources generally are going to be surrounding any tech plant, like Mao Tech Plant, which gives 30. If we scroll down and look at Havar Tech Plant, we see the same thing, 30 mechanized resources, with the surrounding areas giving mech as well. The Tarwich Tech Plant, which is under the VS control, is also giving 30. Okay, time to take a look at the last infantry resource. All the same rules and patterns are going to apply. The biolabs across the map will give 30 resources, and the surrounding areas will give smaller numbers. This is a good rule to go by, but some places in certain areas will provide resources that are not directly connected to a facility. If we go to Amrish, we can see this pattern is across all continents and not just Indar. But when we turn all the resources on, we can easily identify that every region on the map is absolutely worth something, though you might have to zoom in a little bit to see what it is. Now, to take an even further, more analytical view at the map, I'm going to go ahead and unselect everything that we have selected at all, and so that we can see just exactly what the map looks like bare bones. Before we go any further, let's make a quick side note about these little icons on the map, the shield and the bomb explosion. These icons you can insert into after you hit level 10 to place on the map, and only squad leaders can put them down. It's a way of letting other players know on your faction that, hey, we really need to defend here, or hey, try pushing this area with a strong attack. On Esamir and on Amrish, we won't be able to see them, but just remember that only players from your faction can see them. If we check the radio box for hotspots on the map, those are spots where active battles are ensuing. Now, I do have my color scheme set up a bit weird due to recent patches, so what's friendly is actually in green, and what is enemy is actually popping up in red, but hotspots are good indications for new players where fights are going on. If we check the facilities radio box, it just brings up the name of every region or facility on the map, so you can easily identify what the name of it is. The allies and squad platoon radio boxes, when checked, will bring up and show friendlies on the map when you're near them. But since I'm currently doing this from the warp gate and kinda zoomed out, they're not going to show up yet. Plus, I'm not in a squad or a platoon. But if you are, it'll show up on the map. The territory control radio box is a visual overlay of each territory that each faction controls, with red being the TR, blue being the NC, and purple being the VS. A special side note here, especially for new players. When in doubt about where to go or what to do, look for areas that are blinking. You can kind of see them as I'm flopping around here. It means that one way or another, the facility is either under attack or trying to be captured. So by turning on the names of facilities, we can see that Alatum Biolab and the land just south of it are being contested. Parasam Station's also being sieged, and I really can't stress enough that if you're a new player looking for fight or for cap points, start heading to these areas. Second to last, we're going to look at the enemy activity radio box overlay. You can only have either the enemy activity or the territory control on your map because they're both overlays and they're both colored. The light green areas means that there's no activity going on there, or that there's no enemies detected in that area at all. When you mouse over a region on the left hand side of the map, it'll give you some stats about the region that you moused over. So here we can see that Sandstone Mining Gulch has no activity at all. Now, keep your eye on the same spot on the left hand side of the map, but when I hover over a place like Havar, which has very heavy enemy activity, and when it's moused over, enemy platoons are detected. The same with Alatum Biolab. The off-tinted green areas means that there's enemies detected, just not that many in numbers. So by looking at this overlay, we can get a sense of how many and where the enemy forces are located at. I like to think of it as different condition levels. A strong green means that there's no enemy present, tinge green means some enemies, there's also a color for enemy squads, and then finally condition red means enemy platoons, so bring your big guns. The final radio box on the map is the grid. While I personally don't find this terribly helpful, especially for new players, I can see a time and a place when it might be. But as a new player, you're not going to yell out to your squaddies, "Hey guys, I need help at I-6." You're just going to call out the name of the facility that you're at. The letters at the top go from A to P, and the numbers down the left-hand side go from 1 to 16. Think of it like a giant game of Battleship. The one thing that the grid does help with is to sort of tell us the size of each continent. As you can see when you click on Esamir, there's a lot of leftover room that's not being used at all by the grid. Esamir is also the smallest continent. Amherst is the same way, however, and it just gives you a feeling of boundaries. Back on Indar, the grid can give you a feeling of where you can go. You can see that some of the stuff at the top isn't being used at all. The final option on the map is the redeploy button. This is really powerful and really useful if you want to, well, redeploy to somewhere else. When you click this option, you basically suicide out after 8 seconds, and you can spawn any location nearby. However, since my instant actions are now up, I can actually spawn at these locations now. Well, guys and gals, I cannot thank you enough for watching, as always. That's pretty much it as far as the map goes. I sincerely hope that, especially for some new players, this would shine some light onto where the battles are, how to get into them, what they can do. As always, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to either leave it down in the YouTube channel, or I'm on the Connery server under the username Lycan, or you can contact me at Iron Fist Gaming, which is at www.ironfistgaming.com. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.